Alright, so today we're going to look at higher order functions, and I like to break it down into two types. So let's go for the definition of a higher order function first. How would people define it? A function within a function? Yeah, it's not wrong. No, it's along the right lines, definitely. Is a callback function a higher function? Well, not the callback function itself, but a function that contains a callback function is.
Yeah.
So there's two types of higher order functions. The first type of higher order function is a function that returns another function, which would be this case. So function A is returning function B. And the second type is not that type. It is, well, yeah, it is that type. The second type is a higher order function that takes a function as an input. So in other words, a higher order function is a function itself that takes either a function as an input or outputs a function. Or it can do both, of course, but just one of those things will make it a higher order function. Taking another function as an input or returning a function as an output. Cool. Well, that's it. Workshop done. Let's look at some examples. You can't see anything. Alright. So, what will this little snippet return? Yeah, it should return the string I was called inside of function A. So up here, sorry, those are a bit confusing. So up here, function A is declared, and function A returns function B. On line 5, function B is declared, and its return statement is just a string. So line 8 would invoke function A, which runs the inside bit of code. That bit of code depends on function B, so it will have to run the inside code of function B. And then finally we get I was called inside function A, which we do get. Good. So, go on.
Why do we have to take A inside B?
No, I don't know what that's doing there, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know what that was all about. Sorry, it's confusing. I think we were probably playing around with it in the previous workshop, and that was left over. So good spot. Yeah, it shouldn't be there. It was a bit confusing. I agree. Okay, so my question to you now is: what is the execution order of these lines? In what order does the code actually run? Does it get executed?
8, 2, 3, 5, 6.
I'll try and add some breakpoints. It never really lets you do it on a function declaration, unfortunately. And it probably won't stop on 4 and 7. But we'll try and make it stop on 4 and 7. I'm just thinking how else I could write it to make it stop. Up here on this line, perhaps. Try it up there. Therefore, get rid of those ones. We'll try that. So, out of the lines 2, 3, 5, 6, and 8, what do you think is the execution order? Some people might just think it's top to bottom, so 2, 3, 5, 6, 8. That's one option. It'd be incorrect, but it's one option. So what is your guess or your knowledge saying?
8 where it focuses in votes.
So you think 8 comes first? Alright.
Agreed.
Then what?
Then after 8 invokes, it goes to line 2, then 3, and then at 3, it returns
Sorry.
or gives request to function B, which is 5 and 6. So 8, 2, 3, 5, 6.
Okay. Good guess, that's wrong.
If you lost them, type them.
Anyone else? Or did most people think that as well?
How about 2, sorry, 8 first?
Okay. Then what?
So 8,
8 then 2, yeah. Then 3, then 5, then 6, no?
8, 2, then 6,
Yeah.
then 3, then 8,
8 again. Okay, not sure. Wrong as well.
So, but I don't know, I will guess.
Yeah, go ahead, Simon.
It's from,
Sorry, not spotlight, is it?
I think it's 6,
6?
3,
Yep.
8.
That's it? 6, 3, 8. So you don't think the debugger's going to stop? Let's assume the debugger is going to stop, but Simon anyway says 6, 3, and 8 out of those ones. That would still be the incorrect order for those 3, even if we ignored the others. But thanks for trying, good guess. Anyone else, or shall I reveal now? Yeah? So I think it should go 2, because the function declaration will come first. Then it will ignore the internal code of the function. That just gets stored in memory. It doesn't actually get executed. Then line 5 should run to store function B. Line 6 doesn't get executed yet. Then we go to line 8, invokes function A, which runs the code inside of function A. So 3 will come next, and then 6 will come last, because 3 invokes B. So that's what I think. Let's see whether the debuggers work. If not, then 8 should be the first one, if the debuggers are not going to work. So it looks like the debuggers haven't worked, so we've gone to 8. If we go next, it should go to 3. Why has it gone up there? Oh, because it's inside the function, sorry. Yeah. Is it going to let me do that, though? It's be interesting if it lets me do that. Nah. At the start? No. I guess, but it's not really showing that we're running the function line then, is it? It's just showing we're running line 2, but you can try that if you want. Now obviously all these are skewed. Oh. Now it's just crashed. Snap. Alright, so now it should go 2, 6, 10, 4, 8, right? See what happens. 2, 6, 10, 4, 8. So what we're trying to get across is that, yeah, it's annoying why it doesn't let me set one there. I'll just try it once like this and see whether it will be happy, but I very much doubt it. So I would love it to stop on line 5 first, but I think it's going to skip. Oh, we've still got the debuggers there. now like all the breakpoints have just disappeared, and they're probably still there. Oh, DevTools and breakpoints is not fun. You might just have to trust me. Can't even set one now. Yeah, so look, the function will get declared first, then the next function will get declared, and function A is invoked, which runs the inside of function A, and then when we get to that point there, function B gets invoked, so line 6 runs at the end. Yeah, wasn't the clearest example, I apologise, but it's just important to know that the internal parts of the function don't get run straight away. They only get run when they're invoked. But the function declaration does run. Otherwise it wouldn't be able to get stored in memory.
What if you try to use Safari instead of?
I haven't even got Safari, right? I'm not on a Mac. I haven't got Safari installed. Okay. You can take the snippet and try it yourself. It's a simple snippet. Yeah. So let's look at constructing our higher order function that returns another function. So when you see something written like this, in fact, let's just start with 2 of them to begin with. So that syntax probably looks pretty strange to you. This is the name of the function, and then we've invoked that function and passed the number 1 into it. But then we've got another set of parentheses afterwards with the 2 in. What's that doing?
If I remember that, it's executing the function that's returned. So we haven't got it there yet.
Yeah, that means we're trying to execute an inner function. So that says to me there should be another function inside of higher order function type 1, and that has an input of 2. We can get rid of the defaults for now, don't worry about that. And I guess we'll write it in the way that you're most familiar with rather than using a const. So we have function, we have its name, and then we have an input, so I should probably give that input a variable name. So I can just say, I'll say first number in this case. Oops. Number. Then because we've invoked a second time, I know that we are returning another function. Does this function need a name? No. If you want, we could put in a function, but that's pretty useless unless we're going on to call in a function further on down here. Yeah? But we don't need a name if we don't need to invoke it again. It's being invoked here indirectly via higher order type 1. So I'll leave it there for now just to show you it still works. Does the inner function have any inputs? Yes, it has this input here. So I could call that second number. And then let's say I want to add up those 2 numbers. How would I do that? Yeah, but do I do it up here in the first function or? Yeah, so I have to do it inside of the second function. Because of the way JavaScript scope chain works, I have access to variables outside of this inner function, but this higher order type 1 function wouldn't have access to the second number because it hasn't been declared yet. So inside of the inner function, I can return first number plus second number. I should get an output of 3. Yeah. Let's run that. I do indeed get the number 3.
What if you take the second invocation off?
If I take the second invocation off,
Yes, you try that, so you should just return the second function.
Yeah, at this stage it will return the second number as undefined. So it will probably complain. Or it doesn't complain because the inner code hasn't been run yet, which is interesting.
So that's another, so it's return the function, but it's not been invoked, it's just there as the declarations.
Yeah, it just returns the function declaration. If we didn't have that there though, will it throw an error? No, still doesn't. So even though we're referencing a variable that doesn't exist in our code, we can get away with that if we don't invoke it. It's a bit dodgy, I feel, but
If you just create a variable in the second function to the second number and just give it a value of whatever,
yeah,
it will just
if we can put a default value in there. But Max's point is, it doesn't matter at this case because we're not invoking it. It doesn't matter whether this contains some horrible errors, I imagine, because the code never gets run.
Now, what about you invoke without the number then? So invoke second function and no number.
Invoke the second function but with no number.
And now you get an error, should you?
Not because I put that there. I'll get rid of that. Just like that.
Yes.
So what's going to happen now?
It should fail. The second number is not.
So first number is going to be 1. Second number is going to be just undeclared, right? So doesn't exist. Yeah, second number is not defined. If we put it there, we should get a different error, or we're just going to be trying to add first number 1 plus undefined, and we get not a number. Yeah?
Because that time it was invoked the second function, or in the function invoked. But the time before, you were just returning a function because it wasn't being invoked.
Yes. We didn't have the second set of parentheses, so it wasn't being invoked when we were trying before. So it just returns the function declaration, ready for use later. So you could even do something like that, because it returns a function. Yeah? And then when we want to actually invoke that inner function, we just write inner function, its name, send an input in, and that should now return 10. Which it does. So we've just done it in 2 steps there, rather than chaining on the second invocation with a 9. We've done it in 2 steps.
That's interesting, because you keep doing that. I don't know how many levels down, how deep you can go.
You can go as deep as you want. There's no limit unless you exceed the call stack, right? And that's quite a few functions.
What if you add a third in?
Yep, so let's do that now. Third input of 6, for example. So if I do that at the moment, what's going to happen? I think it's going to be an error because it's trying to invoke a function that isn't there. So I don't think it's going to like it, but let's see. Yeah, uncaught error. In other words, this third invocation is not a function. There is no function declared anywhere. However, if we repeat the pattern from above, we return another function, and this time we've got a third number. Then we can return the result of all 3 of them added together, perhaps. First number plus second, no, not snippet. Second number plus plus, no, not this either, that one. Third number. So now it should return 16. Yeah, 1 plus 9 plus 6, and we get 16. Yeah. So, yes, you can do that, but after a certain amount of time, it gets pretty messy. I still find it fairly easy to understand because I can almost just ignore all these declarations and just know what variables I've got access to and just do my actual calculation in the final inner function. So it's not too bad. We could make it more concise by having arrow functions, but I think that becomes less readable. Let's try it now. So we can get rid of the function keyword. We can make it an arrow. I mean, that will still actually work, but let's take it a step further and refactor the other ones. So we've got this third number here as an input, and that is also a function that returns first number plus second number plus third number, like that. So that is equivalent to what we just had. Yeah, return a function that returns another function that returns the first number plus the second number plus the third number. So yeah, it's shorter in terms of what we have to write, but I think that's a little bit more abstract and harder to see at a glance what's going on. Do you agree, or do you find that one? Yeah, do you find that one okay? What's that? It looks better. You see, Mumteen's obviously a fan of just concise, and this is very elegant and sexy. If I don't have lots of functions written everywhere.
If you understand it.
Yeah, if you understand it. Mumteen, could you change this one into an arrow function for me? How would you do that? Just to be like extra sexy today.
We can take a variable.
Yep, so we could make that a variable and set it equal to an arrow function. Get rid of the return, stick it on the same line, and we're good to go. And then because it's very long, X, Y, and Z, right? Boom. Horrible. What have I done now? I've got an extra thing in there. So if you're a fan of the concise, then I guess that's the way to do it. And that's the same thing as what we had there on previously, 5 lines of code. Just be aware you might see that pattern, right, in some code bases. And the giveaway, I guess, is these 3 invocations chained together. You know they're going to be 3 functions. And then you can sort of interpret that, oh, yeah, okay, that's 1 function, 2 function, 3 function that returns the result of the 3 inputs.
So what's the consensus on this style of
Sure. Don't know. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I don't think. Max, what style should we use for higher order functions?
Yeah, looking at that, I struggled with that for a long time. So I feel the other method where you like to put the function written in.
Yeah. I mean, the other style that we had with the indented functions was more the classical style, I guess. That's how we used to have to write callbacks. But now we've got promises, then we don't have to nest callbacks like that. We can instead just chain using .then, or even using the async await syntax, which is even nicer. But it's not quite the same thing, is it? It's not quite the same thing as just chaining normal functions like that. I have no real preference. I'm a bit with Mumtahim. I just like going short and concise, and I can understand that now. But yeah, it's not beginner friendly or friendly for your colleagues. I don't think necessarily writing it like that. Yeah, you've got Cam and Mumtahim on the same team, so you've got Cam writing just things that only make sense to Cam, and then you.
My code's, I think, easier to follow.
So yeah, you might have to agree on some styles before you start your team up, guys. Yeah.
So can you not have like a bit of function body in the middle of all of this?
Yeah.
See how you just put the argument each time with the arrow, and then at the end you're like X plus Y plus Z.
Yeah, but
So you add like
we probably need to wrap it in some curly braces, right? And then return Let's
Then
change
you
y.
have, like, y plus something, and then you plug that in.
Yeah, let's create a new value for y if you want. Oh, you want to create a brand new variable?
No, I'm just saying, like,
Well, we could do that as well.
in the example you gave, you were just kind of chaining all of those arguments together, and in the end you were doing something with all of them. Could you not have, like, input x and then have something happen with x, and then it chains on?
Yeah.
Continue doing that in the arrow style. Does that make sense?
Oh, well, this is still in the arrow style, right?
Yeah.
And then we can return new num. Let me just see what I'm doing here. So I've got curly brace, done some declarations, and then we need to return. But we're returning the function, aren't we? So we've just created new number. That's fine, and then we return a new arrow function. Yeah, interesting. Where do the brackets go? So we return all of that. And then we can use new number instead of y, or we can add both of them if you want. Have I misinterpreted your question, or did you mean something like that? So you've got your initial function, which returns, which takes an input x. It's an arrow function which returns another arrow function with input y. This second arrow function does some stuff to create a new number, and then returns another arrow function that adds all the previous numbers plus the new number, which should be equal to 4. So we should end up with 20.
So does that have to have return? Like when you're invoking the next argument that's changed on.
Well, it has to have return because I've put things in curly braces and I've got two statements there. Yeah, I have two statements. I've created a new number and I've returned a function. So I cannot have two statements between parentheses. Yeah, I can't do that. Unexpected token const, because it's only expecting a return. Well, hold on, it's not expecting a return either. So, yeah, it's trying to return this. So it's trying to return a const declaration, which doesn't even make sense. You just can't have two statements within parentheses. You can have one statement without semicolon there, and that's fine. But I cannot have two separate statements. I could have a ternary. Yeah, it's just going to get even messier, right? And even more hard to understand. So if you have two statements, put curly braces, and if you put curly braces, you need to say what you're returning to chain on to the next function.
Okay, so when you're chaining the next arrow function, it's going to be within the return statement?
Yes. Yep, so I can now do as many things here as I want. Yeah, but the end one is return.
You can't say like in the new num variable, you can't be like y plus x.
Yeah, why not?
I mean y plus z.
No, you can't do y plus z because z hadn't been defined yet.
Okay, so the next argument being invoked in the arrow function can only be defined within the sort of return function. Like it has to be passed into a return function.
So I mean that's what a higher order function is, right? A function that returns another function.
Okay, yeah.
So that's why we've got that pattern. We need to return another function because we've invoked the third function here.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. So what's the other type of higher order function? The other type of higher order function is a higher order function that takes a function as an input. Alright, so here I've got a function declaration and it returns hello. So my question is, I guess, how do I invoke that function? Or how do I just return hello? How do I return the result of that inner function there? Do you want me to return? What, you want to invoke it there? You could technically do that, but let's say we want to invoke it at a later point in time.
In on line 3,
On line 3, yeah.
you just invoke it there, so you return the invoke function. So whatever you pass into line 2, call it say function comes to the file, and then on 3 you just invoke that function. It's saying this is the function, whatever you pass into it, I'm going to run it. That's balance time.
Yeah. So just do that and invoke it, yeah. Absolutely, yeah, that's all you need to do. That should return hello. Yeah, you're often going to want to pass functions to other functions all the time. All the time. So yes, they're very common. I have 2 arrow functions. One of them has returned the user's name. And the second one has returned the user's score. Yeah? It's 100. He's confident. Okay. Yep. So then we could have the user function and the score function. And then we could write a little message saying that Nick's score is 100. Or Nick's highest score is 100 or something like that. How would we do that? Yeah, I want to make a string saying Nicholas's highest score is 100. So $sign first, curly brackets, then the function, invoked, yeah. Nicholas's, yeah. Score is $sign, curly brackets, score, invoked, close curly brackets, something like that. Nicholas's score is 100. Should work. Semicolon at the end, yeah. Care for the details. There we go. Have I got extra space there? No, I think it just looks a bit weird, right? I never know where to put apostrophe S or just the apostrophe, to be honest, when things end in S. Does anyone want to correct my English grammar? That's right. Thank you. Yeah, so there you go. You can invoke functions inside of template literals. Absolutely. You can run any bit of JavaScript code inside of a template literal, as long as you put it inside a $sign and curly braces. You could have, well, we've got a whole function in there, but you could have, yeah, multiple things in there. All right. Let's look at reduce quickly. Yeah, this is fine. So do you remember we did a workshop on map versus for each? So sometimes we also directly compare that with reduce at the same time, but other times that's a bit overload. So we'll do it now. And we previously had a double function. So we had an input of 3 numbers inside an array, and we wanted to double those numbers. And I know it's a lot easier, we can just use map, but just for understanding and trying to learn how to use reduce, let's replicate the same function using reduce. So we want to double the numbers. And my final output I want to be, let's just give us a little bit more space. So I want it to be an array 2, 4, 6. Yeah. So reduce itself is a higher order function, isn't it? What type? It receives a function. It takes a function as an input. Look, this thing here is a function. It's an arrow function. So the reduce method is a higher order function. Alright. How would I write this then? What arguments can reduce take? First thing, it takes something called the accumulator, which you often see written as ACC. The second argument is the current value. You'll see that written numerous ways, val, value, usually something like that. Or what it's actually representing, so this could instead be number in our case. I'll leave it at current value for now. What other options could it take? Index. Anything else? Hmm? The array, yeah. And the value of this, yeah. So some sort of extra this object that we want to pass in there. Yeah. Let's not worry about that for now. That will overcomplicate things, I think, at this stage. But let's consider the first 4 arguments. If I don't want access to the index, but I want access to the array, can I do that? No, because that will now use the index, but it will be called array. So it's going to be very confusing. So these arguments have to be in order. These parameters have to be declared in order. Yes, you can do that. You can do that, Max. Yeah. Oh no, you can't. I thought you could. Oh. All right. I thought I'd done something like that. Maybe it's another language I'm thinking of. Let's say no then. So even if you don't need it, let's declare it for now. Right. We'll leave them all there, even if we're not going to need them, because I just want to put some breakpoints and we can see what they are at each iteration of the reduce method. So in general, what does reduce do? Well, it needs an array to be called on. Fortunately, we have that. We have an array of numbers. So we can invoke it on any array. It will loop over each element in the array. Depending on whether we initialize the accumulator to a value or not, it will have slightly different behavior. If we don't initialize an accumulator, which we can do just by having a second argument here and putting a value, doesn't have to be a number, could be a string, could be a boolean, could be anything really, yeah? So if we don't initialize it, the accumulator will become the first value in the array, and the current value will actually be the second value in the array. And then what does it return? Well, whatever it returns on the iteration will become the new accumulator for the next iteration. I'm going to put some breakpoints in to make more sense, but yeah, this is about the most complicated function you can get in JavaScript. So if you can understand reduce, then you're doing very well. So what do we...
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Steffi.
So anytime you use reduce, you have to use accumulator, current value, index, and array?
No.
Or it's just because you have an array, you have to use all of that to...
You need those two?
Go into array.
They are required.
So if you use reduce, you use accumulator and current value.
Must do those two,
If you don't have an array, you don't need the index and the array.
What do you mean if you don't have an array? You've always got an array, right? Because reduce only works on an array.
Okay. So my question is that if you use a reduce, do you need to use the accumulator current value index and array to actually
Nope, you
go to
need
the array?
those two. Yeah, they are required.
Okay.
That's the absolute minimum. But
Okay.
you might need the index and the array as well.
All right.
You might want to have some conditional statement saying that if the index is equal to 0, so for the first value, do one sort of behavior, and then for every other number, do a different sort of behavior. And this is how you're going to have to structure some of the expert questions on the platform.
Okay.
Yeah, so then you would need access to the index, and you might need to reference the original array at a different index to the current value. Something like that. So that would be a case when you would need to use the array and the index. When you don't want to do something with the current value, you want to do something with the next value, for example. But yeah, as a minimum, you must use the accumulator and the current value, but you can have extra options there if you require it. Yeah, I'm going to leave them there though, just so that we can see how the values change when we've written our function. Cool. Yeah, so anyway, let's write a function that doubles these numbers. How am I going to do that?
I'm not sure if you to do a return on the accumulator of the current value, because like I said, the accumulator will get the first value.
So whatever we return becomes the accumulator. So the accumulator at the start is going to be set to 1, but we want to return an array with the number 2 inside after the first iteration.
So it's the accumulator plus student.
Accumulator plus what?
Plus student value.
Plus current value.
Yes.
Is that going to return an array though?
It's going to return number 6. Yeah, right, return this.
Yeah, and the other
That would be like, would that be like 1 plus 2 plus 3?
Yeah, that's not gonna
So
work.
now
Yeah.
we're doubling the number, so doubling.
Let's put a breakpoint.
Oh, we double. Sorry. So we have to do it.
How many do accumulator times accumulator? Return that.
You want to do accumulator times accumulator? And then what?
Oh, sorry, accumulator times 2, sorry, what am I talking about?
Accumulator times 2. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, we can initialize the index to 0 if you want. It's still not going to quite get the answer we want. Let's just run it now. I want to show you what's happened, yeah? So firstly, we're not returning an array, so that's a big problem. Secondly, we're going to return 2 on the first iteration, and then 2 will be doubled, and then 4 will be doubled. So I think we're going to end up with 8 as well, aren't we? Let's see. Still got a breakpoint. Oh, I've just got 2, 4, and 6 written there. Sorry, that's why it's got that. So let's try again. I've got nothing else down here. Cool. I'll take the breakpoint off first just to see what it returns. It's returning 0 even. Okay, yeah. Because, yeah, obviously. So we've initialized the accumulator to 0, and then we've said return accumulator times 2. So we've just done 0 times 2, 0 times 2, 0 times 2, and guess what? We still end up with 0. Yeah, so let me do this bit by bit. So the first step, the accumulator was 0. The current value becomes 1 because we've initialized the accumulator to 0. The index should be 0, yeah, first iteration, index 0. And the array is just, you can't see that very well, and the array is just a copy of our original array. Yeah, that's all it is. It always is just a copy of the array that we've called reduce on. So, if we go to the next iteration, what are my values going to be? The accumulator is still going to be 0 because we've done 0 times 2. The current value is going to be 2, yeah. Index is going to be 1. And the array is still the same array, always is. Next step, still 0, current value 3, index 2. Yeah, so you see how it's looping over. It's another one of those looping methods. So do we want to not have 0 as an initializer? And see what happens then? So what's going to happen then? Well, we're not going to get 0 this time, definitely not, no. We're going to get... Okay. So first iteration, what's going to happen? The accumulator is 1, because it's the first value in the array. The current value is 2, because we've already used the 1. So the index, we're already on index 1 for our first iteration. So it's skipped one iteration, if you like, and already just taken the accumulator. Array is the same, of course it is. Next time round, what's the value of the accumulator going to be? It's based on our formula. Accumulator times 2. So what's...
2.
Yeah. So 1 times 2 becomes 2. That is the new accumulator. This is how reduce works. It just condenses your code into one single value on each iteration. Yep, so accumulator is 2. Now the current value is 3, and the index is 2. So if we do accumulator times 2, what's our accumulator going to be on the next iteration? 4, yeah. And are there any more iterations after that? You say yes? No, there's no more iterations after that because we've used all our values. So this is going to return just the value 4, and it does. Not quite what we wanted, yeah? We wanted an array of 2, 4, and 6. So how can we do it? Yeah, let's create a new array. So if we want to return an array, let's initialize the accumulator to an array. If you want to return an object, initialize the accumulator to an object. Then you've got this data type to work with. If you want to return a number, sure, you could initialize it to 0 or some other number. Want to return a string? Why not initialize it to a string? There's lots of options, yeah? So I want to... Go on.
So once we assign the accumulator as an array, you say that every iteration is pushing the value to the array.
It won't do yet, but if we write code accumulator.push or something like that, then yeah, absolutely, we will push things inside of the array. You can do absolutely anything with reduce, but you just have to set up the code so that it does that. As long as you want to return a single value, but that single value could be an array that contains hundreds of values. So this time, we don't want to return accumulator times 2 because multiplying an array by 2 doesn't really make sense. In JavaScript it doesn't anyway. So if we return the accumulator, then Max said we can push something inside of the accumulator. What would we want to push inside? Current value times 2, exactly, yeah. Let's run that. So on the first iteration, the accumulator is an empty array. The current value is 1. Therefore, this formula will become array push 1 times 2. So in other words, we will push the number 2 inside of the array. On the next iteration, our accumulator, it just says 1. Yeah, that's not right either because of the way push works. Sorry. So you don't have to return directly. It's just returning the value that we pushed in. So first you push it inside and then you return it. That's how you're going to have to do it with using push. Because what does push return? Push returns Is it the length?
The
Okay.
length of the array.
I'm not sure that it returns the length of the array. I thought it returns the values that you've added in.
Value of the array. No, I think it's the length of the array.
Only the length.
Only the length of the array.
Oh yeah, you're right. So the return value of push is a number representing the length of the new array. Cool. Nice one, Wim team. So we tend not to use push very much anymore. Use things like concat instead, so we can return them directly. But yeah, if we do accumulator.push current value, return the accumulator. I don't know why the semicolon was complaining, it shouldn't do. Then, right. Yeah, so you see after the first iteration, we've got an array with 2 inside of it. Why is our current value still 1? It's a bit bonkers, but it's working. So anyway, that would be how yeah, I find it a bit confusing the way the current value is written like that. I don't think it's displaying correctly, but that would be how you would use reduce to double all the numbers. So it's more complicated than using map, but hopefully it's a bit illustrative in terms of how reduce works. So you can do any code you want inside of the reduce function, and whatever you return becomes the accumulator next time around. I've just said that about 3 times, unfortunately. Yeah, map is the simplest way to do it, but this should illustrate how to use reduce. Do the same thing with concat, maybe a bit simpler. Concatenate. Or you could create new objects if you wanted. But I think the time's getting on. I don't want to take up too much of your time today when you want to concentrate on your team apps a little bit. We can either just do like a higher order question on the platform, or we can leave it there. What do you want to do? Higher order question on the platform? Which one do you want to look at? 1 to 5. Someone just joined? Cameron's joined again. Okay, hey Cam.
Hey, sorry, my connection just dropped a couple minutes ago. I just missed last thing you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, you saw the end of using reduce to calculate double the numbers in the array, or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
So,
I saw all that.
yeah, we were just talking about what to do next. So we're just going to do one question on the platform on higher order functions, and then leave it there probably for time reasons.
Okay, cool.
So higher order functions, play again. There are no higher order function questions on beginner, so this is intermediate JavaScript. What type of higher order function is this? An arrow higher order function. Yeah, alright, but does it take a function as an input, or does it return a function? Takes function as an input, yeah? We see multiply opens one set of parentheses. There are no second set of parentheses, so there's no inner functions inside of that multiply function. However, we are sending 2 arrow functions in as inputs. So that means I could name my parameters. My keyboard's just suddenly decided to stop working. It's really strange. It's the platform. It does that sometimes, does it? I've never seen that. Okay, seem to be back. So I could say function A and function B, and then we return function A multiplied by function B, like that. Yeah, we need to invoke the functions. Never forget to invoke the functions. Oh, but that's not quite right. We didn't read the question properly because one of these test cases only has one function. So we're trying to multiply by something that's undefined and returning not a number. So what? Make a condition? You want an if-else? We can start with an if-else and then... Oh, is this going to happen constantly? Could do a whiteboard challenge, yeah. Go old school, absolutely. Right. So yeah, you want some sort of condition. So you said do an if condition. So if what? If fmb. If fmb what is equal to something, or if? Yeah, let's do if else first because that's what Gideon suggested, and then we can refactor it to a ternary. So if fmb, then. Oh. No, you don't have to invoke it. Although that would also work, because if it returns a truthy value, but it's safer just to say if the function exists, yeah? Then do that one. Otherwise, yeah, just invoke function A and get us the result of that, please. And then that's all good. Confetti time. So yes, we could have done a ternary. So in other words, if fmb is truthy, if we do have a function, then do that one. Otherwise, I'm obviously a big fan of one-liners today, so there we go. No, I've done something wrong. Yeah, I haven't returned anything. So let's make sure we return the statement. And then it's all good again. Confetti time, yeah? Beautiful. Let's skip all the way to the last one, and we'll do that as well. Is that last one? How do I tell? Is there not a 5 of 5 somewhere? There it is, 5 of 5, yeah. Okay, what type of higher order function is this? It's both. Can we see that the first function opens its brackets and closes its brackets there? So combine higher order function takes this function as an input, but we have another set of parentheses afterwards. So that means it takes a function as an input and it returns a function. And the input for that second function is the number 3 in the first case. It looks like we always have that pattern. One function input and invoke a second function inside of it. But the formula changes somewhat. Okay. So I know that I need to... Keyboard, come on. Does this reset even work? No, I literally have to refresh the page. So let's return another function. That function took an input. Number, I don't know. The second function, yeah, also takes an input. Oh, I'm on a different question now. Jesus. Refreshed and I got that. What's going on? Skip. Combine. Yes, please. Now I've got everything. All right. So we had our number input. And what do I do with that number input? So how would I get from 3 to 15? So I want to times the number by 5. Does that always work? Do I just times it by 5 or do I have to do something else to it? 7 times 5 is not 70. So firstly we need to declare our function, and then we invoke that function and pass as an input the number times 5 inside. So 3 times 5 is 15, pass it to the function just returns that same number. However, in the second case, 7 times 5 is 35, pass it to the function, that multiplies it by 2 and gets 70. 2 multiplied by 5 gets us 10, pass that into the function, 10 plus 3 gets us 13. That pattern seems to hold. Yeah, so we had our function input and our number input, and we combined them through the higher order functions. All good. Any elegance issues? Semicolon. I was expecting my keyboard to break then, so I couldn't enter it. Nice. I think that's the only elegance issue. Oh, another one. Really? See, I find that a bit strange. I know it's a return statement, but also it's the end of a function, so I guess we have to put one.
I get that issue all the time.
Yeah, I mean, look, outer function, we don't need one, but because it's part of a return statement, we need a semicolon. It's just fussy. It's fussy. But I guess that's the way the linter has declared is a best practice, so we should try and follow it. That's it, really. Any questions? No? Alright, there's no individual reduced training at this stage, but if you do any expert, you will need to use the reduce function quite a lot, so it will come in handy then. Okay. That's it.